Roy Maurice Keane, generally loved as a pundit for his straight-talking style, but the bloke's fast approaching his mid-50s, so it occurred to me that there'll be many who've never seen him play. How did this thug who only injured people and gets sent off regularly become such a mainstay in a successful Man United team? Was he really that good? Stick around to find out. Firstly, Keane was so successful because he was good. Very good. He was named by Pelé in his list of the world's greatest living players in 2004, the only Irish player in the list. Although, let's be honest, El Hadji Diouf was also in the list, so take from that what you will, and was entered into the Premier League Hall of Fame in 2021, so he must have been able to play a bit. But not everyone saw this talent when he was younger. He played for the semi-pro Cove Ramblers back home in Ireland, and while he was there, he was applying for trials at English clubs, but no one wanted to know. He was also turned down for the Ireland schoolboys team for being too small, although, as we'll find out a bit later, Keane wasn't exactly brilliant for team harmony in a national team dressing room. But he was carving a bit of a name for himself at the Ramblers after his senior debut in August '89, and after barely a year in the team in the summer of 1990, Nottingham Forest and manager Brian Clough came along and signed him for 47 grand including bonuses, with a weekly wage of 250 quid, a certified bargain. A bit ironic though, being just Forest one of the English clubs who refused to give him a trial. But a 19-year-old Keane was homesick at first. Now, Clough weren't no mug. He was a rather decent manager who recognised talent, so he did all he could for Keane to settle, including letting him return home regularly. Keane later thanked Clough's generosity, saying it helped him get through the early days at the club. And talking of early days, Keane didn't even know he was going to make his debut. Clough took him to Anfield for their match against Liverpool, and Keane's job as a young inexperienced squad member was to help out with the bags and lay out the shirts in the dressing room. That is until Clough told him to put on the number 7 shirt, and with no time to think about it, he made his first division debut against one of the best wingers in the world, John Barnes. That's because at Forest, Keane was often used on the right of midfield, but the following year, 1991, was the start of the making of Roy Keane. In May 91, Forest reached the FA Cup final, Keane versus Gascoigne. Not the first time the two had met, as the first time Gaz had told him that he's an Irish wanker who can't fucking play, which was pointless as Keane said he couldn't understand him with his thick Geordie accent. But the route to the final wasn't plain sailing for a young Keano. After a mistake against Crystal Palace in the third round, Brian Clough punished Keane in the most Brian Clough way. Did he call him into the office and bollock him? Did he berate him in front of all the team? Did he fine him a week's wages? No, he punched Keane straight in the chest, floored him. Keane reacted by saying he had no ill feelings towards Clough, management's tough, and he's too grateful to Clough for giving him his chance. Oh, and Forest lost the final 2-1, which meant, believe it or not, that Spurs now held the record for the most FA Cup wins with 8, a trophy that the great Forest manager never won. Anywho, that same month he earned his first Ireland cap under manager Jack Charlton, not long after playing for the under-21s against Turkey, where he had a bit of a hissy fit, criticising the organisation and preparation, saying the setup was a bit of a joke, a sign of things to come, as we'll see later. The following year, 1992, saw the invention of football, the start of the Premier League. We all know that football didn't exist before then, and it was also the year Keane lost another final at Wembley, this time the League Cup final against his future employers. That year, Blackburn boss Kenny Dalglish spoke to him about a move to the future champions. I mean, obviously he didn't know they'd be future champions, he couldn't predict the future or anything, but in any case, Forest was struggling in the league at the time, badly. So Keane negotiated a new contract with a relegation escape clause. The contract went down badly with Clough, who called him a greedy child, and that Keane is the hottest prospect in football right now, but he's not going to bankrupt this club, which was just nonsense as Keane was successful in negotiating the contract, and as Forest got relegated, he activated his release clause, and this is where crafty Fergie stole the transfer. You see, after his chit-chat with Dalglish earlier in the season, Forest Player of the Season agreed to a £4 million move to Blackburn, but in the days before emails and WhatsApp and Snap or whatever else the cool kids use, a paperwork problem prevented the move. Yeah, I know, actual physical paperwork. You see, as this was a Friday evening and the office staff had gone home for the evening, they needed to meet on the Monday morning to officially complete the transfer, so they shook hands and Keane celebrated on the Saturday with a few beers. Fergie, the crafty old devil, heard this and phoned a hungover Keane on the Sunday and asked whether he'd join them instead. Fergie flew him into Manchester Airport, and after a lot of haggling between the two clubs and a few phone calls from an upset Dalglish who told Keane that he's a wee bastard and that nobody fucks with Kenny Dalglish, United signed him for £3.75 million in July '93, a British transfer record. To put that into context, when you adjust the transfer fee for football inflation, according to The Athletic, it works out at over £94 million, Yes, you heard me right, nearly 100 big ones, which puts him roughly on par with Paul Pogba. Hang on, that doesn't sound as glamorous, does it? Never mind, I'll edit that bit out later. But Keane had some competition on his hands. Paul Ince and Brian Robson were United centre midfielders at the time, and to put that into context, in 2011 Robson was voted as United's greatest ever player, better than Cantona, Best and Charlton. That's how good he was. But he was an old man by this point. He was 36, and as a result Keane had an extended run in the team, scored some important goals, and at the end of the season had his hands on his first trophy as a pro with the 1994 Premier League, unless we count the full Members' Cup with Forest, which, let's be honest, we're not. Then for good measure won that season's FA Cup, which says it all, as that means that Keane's arrival coincided with United winning their first ever double. And then came the 1994 World Cup, the World Cup of Diana Ross missing a penalty in the opening ceremony, the World Cup of Diego Maradona being banned for failing the drugs test, and I'm not sure why, as his eyes look totally normal, and the World Cup of Ireland finishing above Italy in the group, and Keane played in every game. They went out in the second round, but the Ireland squad were greeted as heroes, and the players lapped it up, apart from Keane, that is. He said that there was nothing to celebrate, we achieved little. At this point Keane was still being used on the right like Forest did, and after Ince went to Inter in the summer '95, Keane switched to centre mid. And when United sold some experienced midfielders and brought in some young guns such as David Beckham, Nicky Butt and Paul Scholes, this made Keane the most experienced player in United's midfield. This year wasn't as successful, finishing as runner-up in both the League and FA Cup, and received his first of 11 red cards for Man United when he stamped on Gareth Southgate, something that I wanted to do as an England fan when watching his boring tactics, but I digress. And that year Blackburn won the Premier League, managed by his apparent enemy Kenny Dalglish. In '96 Kevin Keegan said he would love it if they beat United, love it, but he didn't love it in the end, as United won the double again, even though Newcastle were 12 points clear at one point, and Keane won his second FA Cup. Another league win followed the following season, getting a bit boring, keep saying that now to be honest, although Keane was in and out of the team due to knee injuries and suspensions. And that year Eric Cantona followed the Trawlers by retiring completely out the blue, so Fergie made Keane captain. The following season, 97-98, was one of Keane's most notorious. Around a quarter of the way into the season he injured his cruciate ligament while trying to foul Alfie Haaland. While Keane lay on the ground screaming in agony, Erling's dad did something stupid. He stood over Keane, accusing him of faking injury to escape punishment from the referee. Big mistake. Keane didn't play any more competitive football that season, and United lost the league to Arsenal. Some think that Keane's absence was a big factor in United screwing it up, especially as they had an 11-point lead at one point. Think of it as an older version of Man City and Rodri, when it all went to shit, and that's the impact he was having. The next season will go down in United legend. 1999, the year they won the treble, and for 20 odd years at least were the only English club to win the treble. I mean, Liverpool won the treble in 2001, but it was a League Cup, UEFA Cup and FA Cup, and we're not having that, are we? Keane was instrumental that season with his performances and the way he lifted his teammates. And when he got a yellow card in the Champions League semi-final against Juventus, which would mean he'd be suspended for the final, many players might be forgiven for letting it affect him, but not Keane. He played an absolute blinder, not forgetting that he was playing against World Cup winners Zinedine Zidane and Didier Deschamps, remember, as well as the pitbull Edgar Davids, and scored United's first goal in their comeback win. And so the most important couple of weeks in United's history. They needed a leader, and they had one, except they didn't have one. Keane got injured 9 minutes into the FA Cup final, which meant that his suspension for the Champions League final was a bit of a moot point, as his ankle was knackered anyway. We'll gloss over the fact that he scored a perfectly good goal in the FA Cup semi-final against Arsenal, which was flagged for offside. Honestly, where's VAR when you need it? Which meant that the match instead went to a replay, and Ryan Giggs scored a goal that you may have seen from time to time. And after United cleverly lulled Bayern into a false sense of security in the final, they nicked him in the last few minutes, which I reckon was their plan all along, Keane could lift the Champions League trophy, the defining moment in the player's career. United had reached the promised land, but not for Keane, who described it as the worst experience I've had in football due to missing the match. But he kind of made up for it later that year when he scored the only goal of the game in United's Intercontinental Cup win over Palmeiras. Kinda. Then came the year 2000, the year that Big Brother hit our screens, the year that the PlayStation 2 was released, the year that the Millennium Bug was supposed to end the world as we knew it, but the only thing that ended was Keane's old contract as he negotiated a new one. His new wage of 52 grand a week made him briefly the highest paid player in the league, and absolutely demolish United's wage structure. And when the club came out and said that the increase in season ticket prices was a result of the new contract, it didn't go down too well with Roy. And something else that didn't go down too well in the year 2000 was his prawn sandwich quote, which is now the stuff of football legend. In November of that year, after a Champions League match against Dynamo Kiev at Old Trafford, Keane endeared himself to the United fans when he said, "Away from home our fans are fantastic. I'd call them the hardcore fans. But at home they have a few drinks and probably the prawn sandwiches, and they don't realise what's going on out on the pitch. I don't think some of the people who come to Old Trafford can spell football, never mind understand it." Yeah, he said that. And after winning the PFA and Football Writers Player of the Year awards that year, 2001 brought that infamous incident in the Manchester derby. Keane versus Haaland, round 2. Keane wiped out Haaland with a knee-high foul. At first he was given a red card, a 3-match ban and a £5,000 fine from the FA. So far, so normal. But this changed in August 2002 when Keane released his first autobiography, which, shall we say, told the story from his point of view. "Alfie was taking the piss. I'd waited long enough. I f***ing hit him hard. The ball was there, I think. Take that, you c***. And don't ever stand over me again sneering about fake injuries. And tell your pal Weatherall there's some for him as well." Except his autobiography didn't say that. When this was leaked before it was released, let me tell you this was a big story at the time. The FA charged him with bringing the game into disrepute, slapped an extra 5 matches onto his ban and hit him with a massive £150,000 fine, a total loss of about £400,000 with court costs. And not only that, but the FA forced him to change that part of the book, and the real words weren't published until his second autobiography in 2014. No doubt this huge punishment made Keane learn his lesson. Keane stated he had no regrets over the incident and would probably do the same thing again. And to address any myths, Haaland actually completed the match, played a match for Norway and then played over an hour of City's next match after the foul. It was injury to his other knee that ended his career. All of this goes to say that for 6 seasons between 1996 and 2001, United won the league every year, except the one that Keane missed due to injury. Oh, and 2001 was also the year that he got sent off for throwing a ball at Anne Sheeran's head. Another trophyless season followed in 2002, finishing 3rd in the Premier League, their lowest since 1991, a record that David Moyes and Erik ten Hag would brilliantly smash in the years since. And after being knocked out on away goals to Bayer Leverkusen in the Champions League, he blamed United's loss of form on his teammates' obsession with wealth, saying that players had lost the hunger that got you the Rolex, the cars, the mansion. At this point it's easy to say that Keane just moans about everything and everyone, but the bloke had high standards. It's easy to see why he's seen as one of the greatest captains in football history. He elevated players and performances, motivated players to do better, and it worked. But one person it didn't work on was national manager Mick McCarthy. Fast forward to the World Cup, 2002. Believe it or not, but Keane was unhappy with Ireland's training facilities, and he had a bit of a point to be fair. The Irish FA sent the team to the tiny island of Saipan to prepare, supposedly to get the players used to the hot, humid conditions. It didn't start well, with long delays in the busy airport in Dublin, surrounded by fans and journalists, and didn't get much better from there, with training pitches that were rock hard due to the weather, pitches that some of the players got injured on, such as Lee Carsley and Steve Finnan, and the FA losing all the team's training gear, which meant they had to borrow kits and footballs from locals. Keane described it as a third-world approach to the game. For once, Keane tried to deal with the situation diplomatically. He took McCarthy aside twice with his concerns, but that fell on deaf ears, so he decided he was off, withdrawing from the squad. The team physio talked him into staying, and he also had a phone call with Fergie for advice. Keane agreed to give an interview which was supposed to clear rumours of tensions in the Irish camp. But instead he gave an explosive interview and said he's retiring from international football after the tournament. McCarthy didn't like that he'd said all this publicly, so he called a team meeting and bollocked Keane in front of his teammates, hold him a copy of the interview and ask him why he did it. Then, remember when Haaland accused him of faking injury? McCarthy should have known better. He accused Keane of faking an injury to get out of a qualifying match against Iran, and Keane calmly replied, "You're a f***ing whacker. I didn't rate you as a player, I don't rate you as a manager, and I don't rate you as a person. You're a f***ing wanker and you can stick your World Cup up your ass. I've got no respect for you. The only reason I have any dealings with you is that somehow you're the manager of my country. You can stick it up your bollocks." To the surprise of absolutely nobody, McCarthy sent Keane home. Many Irish fans held Keane responsible, that he should have put personal beef aside to focus on the tournament. And for the next few weeks, all Keane seemed to do in the newspapers was walk his dog. And in the middle of the road, as you do. The incident was that notorious that they're even making a film out of it, Saipan. And his year didn't get any better. In August 2002, he was hit with his second £150,000 fine, this time by Fergie, for elbowing his Ireland teammate Jason McAteer, The guy who years later said this about Keane on Twitter. At this point he used the opportunity from his Haaland suspension to have an operation on his hip, as it had been giving him some jip for a year. Now the FA weren't happy that he timed his op to coincide with the suspension, so to really make sure that he got punished, they actually delayed the start of his suspension, and he made his comeback on December 22nd that year. And while he was recovering from the op, Keane had an epiphany. A revelation, like an angel had visited him and told him the error of his ways. You see, while he was off he thought long and hard about his injuries. He came to the conclusion that the cause of his many injuries was his angry hissy fits and reckless tackles, so he decided to become more calm and restrained on the pitch, started to avoid confrontations. Yes, the guy who snapped a guy's knee, stamped on another and told another bloke to stick his World Cup up his bollocks was now going to avoid confrontation. Some pundits thought that the new Keane had become less influential in the United team, maybe as a result of his new soft boy image, maybe due to his decreased mobility after his hip operation. He was still influential enough to lead the team to another league title in May 2003. After winning the FA Cup in 2004, setting a modern record of playing in 6 FA Cup finals, and being recalled to the Ireland team after McCarthy went, 2005 was the scene of another famous Roy Keane incident. Remember, this is the new Roy Keane, the calm, composed Keane who avoids confrontation and avoids arguments. Yeah, the same Keane who ended up arguing with Patrick Vieira in the tunnel at Highbury before the match. Vieira confronted Gary Neville about an incident from previous match and Keane saw red, leading him to tell ref Graham Poll to tell Vieira to shut his fucking mouth. Poll later admitted that he should have sent them both off, but it was under pressure not to. But the best part of this came after the match. Afterwards, Keane criticised Vieira for playing for France rather than Senegal, the country of his birth. Vieira's response? That as he walked out on his country during the World Cup, Keane is not in a good position to comment on such matters. Need some ice for that burn, Roy. Later that year, Keane left United, which was a very amicable, friendly split from the club. Keane wished his manager well and went on his merry way. You don't believe that, do you? Keane was already out the team due to injury. Fergie reckoned that Keane changed when he realised he wasn't the Keane of old, so Fergie tried to change his role in the team, discouraging as many forward runs during matches. Keane was too proud to accept this. Then, before the season, United had a training camp in Portugal which was arranged by Fergie's assistant, Carlos Queiroz. And you know what Keane is like when it comes to training camps abroad. Keane was angry. He said that the houses provided were beneath their standards and said he wouldn't be staying in his. Queiroz offered 3 more houses, which he refused. The next day at training, Roy blew a fuse at Fergie, barking out a long list of complaints. Keane was later asked to go to the office to apologise to Queiroz. He said no, said Fergie had changed, that he wasn't the same man. The two men had a proper argument, the hairdryer treatment at each other. In November 2005, the month that he left United, Keane appeared on MUTV, Man United's own channel. This new calm Keane who avoids confrontation called out many of his teammates, asked why people rave about Darren Fletcher, called Kieran Richardson lazy. Alan Smith and Edwin van der Sar were also in his little rant. He finished with this little number about Rio Ferdinand. Just because you paid 120 grand a week and played well for 20 minutes against Tottenham, you think you're a superstar. The funny thing is that it shouldn't have even been Keane on the show. Gary Neville was on the rota for the show that day. Fergie was not impressed. Keane came up with a genius idea that they show it to the players to let them decide. Fergie agreed. Presumably with popcorn in hand, the whole team sat and watched it. It went down like a fat kid on a seesaw. Van der Sar told him he was out of order, so this new calm Keane who avoids confrontation started on him. Van Nistelrooy stuck up for him, so Keane started on him as well. Then for good measure, the new calm Keane who avoids confrontation started on Carlos Queiroz about the lack of variety in the training sessions. And to really hammer his point home, he asked Queiroz whether he always made love to his wife in the same position. When Queiroz quite rightly asked what he was talking about, Keane says, "You change the position, don't you? Sometimes you have to mix training up a little bit." And if you think I'm joking about Keane asking the assistant manager about sex positions with his wife, there it is in black and white in his book. Then came the line that sealed his fate, confirmed his exit from the club, when he accused Fergie of bringing his private life into the club, with an ongoing legal dispute over a horse or something. At that point, some players started walking out. After Keane left, Fergie said to Queiroz, "He needs to go, Carlos," and Carlos agreed. And so it was in November 2005, Roy Keane, possibly United's greatest ever captain, left the club. Fergie said that the dressing room relaxed when he left, which doesn't massively surprise me given that he verbally attacked half of his teammates. The following month he joined Celtic, the club he supported as a boy. He signed an 18-month contract and left after 6 when he retired from football after medical advice. Although in those 6 months he did win the League and League Cup, his last honours as a player in 2006. Just before his retirement, Keane's testimonial was held. Of course it was Celtic against Man United, and he played a half for each team. He says in all that it's still the largest ever crowd for a testimonial in England, with nearly 70,000 peeps turning out to see him. He had a brief managerial career during which he got Sunderland promoted to the Premier League and won the Championship Manager of the Year award, was offered the Celtic manager's job but turned it down, and in 2011, the year he left Ipswich as manager, he started his pundit career when he was a guest for the Champions League final for ITV, which he agreed to partly because he needed the ticket and partly because his horoscope that day said you can't keep saying no to people. Yes, really. Keane initially felt that doing TV work was failure as he'd failed at management, but he's been a regular on our screens ever since. After he left the game with 19 major trophies, 17 at United, and 67 caps for his country. Surprised he got that many with the amount of arguments he had with his FA, but still, what United would do now to have a player with his drive, standards, energy and guts. From the old Keane that is, not the new calm avoids confrontation Keane, except when he's elbowing fans in the face. But that's another story for another day. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Watch these on screen because they're awesome. You're awesome for watching. If you were keen on my video, see what I did there? Then it'd be awesome if you'd like and subscribe and all that stuff. And see you later.